like, I think we can do this with Q&A as we go, honestly, and I want to make sure that any thoughts that you guys have, out there and start talking about. Well, some of this, since I've literally just done this, of course, is repetitive. This again is the timeline that we did in our process. Again, February 2011 is when we introduced student-based expense management and started working with the educators on that and school leaders. And May of 2014 is when we flipped the switch and released the revenue formula. And that time, that 3 years was so critical to getting the buy-in, to getting our educators prepared to make those decisions that we needed them to make, that they wanted to make. They wanted to make those decisions at their local level to be able to change their educational programs and benefit their students in a real-time way. And so that 3 years was just a wonderful investment. And the Board of Education was they getting antsy? They wanted the revenue formula. And I said, just wait. They're not ready yet. We'll know when it's time, and it will be a whole lot of fun after that. This is some of the stuff I've already talked about, I guess. Here's our organization chart. I mentioned that it was pretty thin. We have the three officer team at the top, forming what we call the Office of the Superintendent. Directly reporting to the education officer then are those zone leaders. The chief education officer has the zone leaders, which are akin to area superintendents in many districts. They supervise then the principals, supervise the teachers. That's our core. There's the business office and the operations office are there as well. Down the bottom middle with the dotted lines is our IT group, because as I mentioned, that's completely outsourced right now. So matrix management, distributed leadership, again, I talked a little bit about this in the first session. This is, again, the illustration I provided to our folks several times to try and demonstrate what do we mean here. We have on the top here what I call purely educational driven, purely locally driven. Those decisions about the educational program that they are making on their own, because they're the ones on the ground. They're the ones interfacing with their students and their teachers and saying, hey, we need to change this curriculum, we need to tweak this, and we want them to do that very quickly. We want organizational agility. That's been my mantra, is to be able to make quick decisions and move on. We have then what we call the middle ground. These are things where there are other aspects that need to be considered. Special education is a good example of that. Yes, we do. We have the principals have a big voice in the special education that happens in their building. But then, of course, we have a lot of regulations and rules that we got to follow. And we have our special education director there as that consultant, provide that support for them. We have a very small section here at the bottom that are called district driven. These are the things that are just kind of the givens on how the business operates. We do payroll once a month on the 15th. That's not one of the decisions we're going to throw around at the building level. And so don't worry about that one. Again, this encourages collaboration. It really requires collaboration. Again, we're not as big as the others. We do have 22 buildings in play in this, and some buildings are embracing it quicker than others, for sure. And what we're seeing is that when the collaboration is highest, that's when we're getting the best activity and the best result for each school. So I had the final picture of this illustration in the first presentation, and then this again is just taking the matrix that's kind of boiled down, where we have zone control or school control decisions, middle ground, and then district-driven decisions. And then the first layer that we do here from a financial reporting perspective is the revenue side. We have the general program revenues, we have grant designated funding revenues, we have fee-based revenue sources, fundraising, all of those things that we're tracking as well. And then behind there are how we start to layer in the expenses. In a couple pages from now, you'll see kind of how this looks on a final report basis. But we took basically the program codes and started to big block those. We have the educational priorities, what's happening in the regular education program. In presenting this, as always, we try and be consistent, because not everyone loves numbers like I do, and people in the business office do. So we have the color coding to try and orient people quickly when they see these. So we have the education in blue. We layer on the local school administration there in red categories. We have the overhead administration in orange, and again we have the net asset position sitting underneath. When we first started this process, there was a concerted effort that we said we wanted to move money from orange to red to blue, if at all possible. We wanted to maximize the amount that was happening at the education level for each student. So that gets back to our again our big rock of each student, and having each student receive the maximum benefit of their relative share of per pupil revenue as possible. And so that's why we started with this process and this kind of way of presenting it, so that people could see that as they make decisions. So again, here's an example of a report that's in our board report every single month. Again, the next page, I think we'll be able to zoom in on a couple of things, or I'll get there eventually. This is basically looking at this is the total view where we have the school locations, we have administration here, and we have then the total district presented on one page. Across the top, we have the program groups. There you see the blue, again, coding, that's what's happening in regular education, and we have the red groups of the administration view. This report that we built, it's 47 pages, I think, every single month that we do. It's not exceptionally long, but it is deep. It is designed to be a reference tool. It's not designed to be a front to back read. It's designed to say, hey, I have a question about my school. How is it doing in its particular spending? They go straight to that page, and they can answer that question. When they have questions about special education, they go to those pages. This is just an example of how we can blow it up bigger. What we have across the top, the side here, just the object levels. You have your personnel. Again, I focus initially on the personnel cost versus implementation cost, and then we can expand that to the next level of object view, where you have regular salaries and benefits under your personnel, and you have all of your purchase services, supplies, equipment underneath your implementation costs. This right here is again, I'm not expecting you to see numbers, but hopefully you see some of the color coding that's down here. That looks kind of confusing, but if once the school leader has some orientation on that, that can help them recognize that, hey, the beige highlights in here, those are that staffing piece. When they make a decision on staffing, this is where they should see the impact of that. When they have building operations here coded in the blue, they will see that. The green is the educational programs. So again, once they have some orientation to that, and they can navigate it pretty well on a month-to-month basis, it becomes a pretty good tool for them. So here's a call out of Falcon High School. Falcon High School, here's our location code, here's our student count. We have the personnel costs right here. And so then we measure, here's our per pupil spend for regular instruction at Falcon High School. We have all of the implementation costs between purchase services, supplies, and equipment that are being spent for the regular instructional program at Falcon High School. And again, we have that measured then on a per pupil basis, and then the total down here. And then that same data view is available as they go across the page for the different instructional programs that we have highlighted. This page, I don't think I have a zoom in on this one. This page takes the regular instructional program and then blows that out by the individual programs underneath that. We have categories for your math, your sciences, your Englishes. Again, all the program codes that we already have in FBP, we just desire to put a lot of precision into that. And we take teachers and when we code specifically, what is that teacher teaching? If they are teaching half math and half PE, we have them coded that way. We budget them that way, so that we can make a good decision and see the impact of that decision here. So this page right here is simply to support this one column of data. And so again, a lot of what we try and build is just peeling the layers of the onion. What's the next question? What's the next logical question? We're going to anticipate that and provide data and information by providing context so that folks can understand that. This is a way, again, a lot of small numbers that you're not going to be able to read, but what you should know from this page is how we can stack up every school against each other. And on one page, you can get an understanding on a gross level view what each school is doing on a per pupil spend for each of these programs going across. again, information without context or data without context can be tricky. And so our guidance to folks, to our board members, to our publics who read this is always to say, find your question, and then bring the question to us, and then we'll help you understand. And you may oftentimes help us identify a situation or a problem that we need to work on. That's one of the things I say about transparency. Transparency is about you see the process in motion. There are mistakes that are being made because we're not sitting there trying to build the perfect system and then reveal it to you. We're building it as we go. We're asking for help. And for guidance on what changes would be helpful and what things are not working so well. So this again is the kind of the result after the normalizations, where we say each school, each zone, I guess in this case, is going to have a certain level of funding, and we break it up into these categories. So these, what the color coding to say, here's where your decision points are at. When you talk about what your staffing plan is going to be for next year, what are you wanting to do? Are you wanting to increase some of your expertise in a certain subject matter? You can have that opportunity. You can make that decision. If you're wanting to do more or less in other areas, we are there as the consultants to quantify that for them and guide them in that decision-making process, but we do not make the decisions. We lay the decision points out for them and say, okay, what do you want to do? Again, here's the revenue side that we went through a little bit earlier. Any questions on any of this so far? If you'd like me to clarify?
I do. So you mentioned earlier that you were going to be building in the academic success into this process somehow in your next iteration. Mm-hmm. How are you doing it in these formats too?
How will I incorporate that information in here?
Right.
Well, a page like this will end up. We will end up. Probably what I'm going to end up doing. Let me go back a couple more here. A page like this, we will start to have, again, school by school basis. We'll have a set of financial data here. We're going to end up having a set of metrics and measurables for the academic performance, also presented, and bringing that together in the lower corner. So we're gonna have a single page for each school. We're already building that and getting the information kind of lined up so that we can do that, because we want to do that on a regular, routine basis as well. It's not just a once in a while point in time type of view. Does that help?
I guess it was, are they going to be able to utilize that to say we're not doing as well academically in a certain area? How can we bolster that, and how will that affect the budget? Is that the gist of where you're going?
That would be the intention, yes. Between all these data points of information, you'd be able to look at that and make inferences, make decisions, make conclusions out of that, and then make adjustments as we go.
What kind of financial system do you have to support this? I mean, obviously, you do a lot of work in Excel. Do you have a system administratively behind it that oversees and does all your checks and balances, or what?
Yeah, we have an accounting system, and I call it very specifically an accounting system. It's not a good accounting systems that try and do forecasting and budgeting often or lose the integrity of the accounting side. So we use the Alio product from White Hammer. It's not a great system, but it does do that official book of record, that accounting function well enough for us, and that's what we then are able to extract from here. We do have a data warehouse on the education side, and so merging that data warehouse with basically our data warehouse that I'm pulling out into Access in Excel is the process.
You mentioned the students' academic performance. What about the teacher stuff?
That we have the potential to do that, yes. And so that's kind of up to the education office to lead us in that area, but we have the abilities to do that. We're going to. The question is when and from what perspective and into what depth. How do we grow into that? Because just like we grew into this process, that's not something we're going to want to flip a big switch right away. We're going to want to take some not cautious, but some intentional measured steps into that area first, because our intent won't be to call out people and don't. highlight problems. Our intent is going to be provide information and hopefully provide some examples of where some schools can learn from other schools as to what's working well.
How do you attach your UIP goals to your budgeting process?
That is the education office that is in charge of that UIP process, and as that gets finalized and distilled to the schools, then when the schools meet with our team to talk about what they want to do for budgets next year, they are bringing those points to them and saying, here's the adjustment I need to make related to our UIP. It's going to result in a staffing change. It's going to result in a service or some supply change. So here's how we're going to reflect that. And so that's part of that discussion that happens through the course of the spring when we're meeting school by school.
Thank you.
Yes.
As far as on the accounting side, what kind of change was there for the actual accounting department where, like right now, a lot of us that everything just runs through accounting departments, and that's the school maybe doing their purchasing. But it sounds like is the school then generating more, and then it goes to accounting before recruited, or how did that happen?
So the account coding, a lot of coding does happen at the school level. But again, we're trying to provide a lot of guidance and a lot of consulting to them to make sure that they understand how to do that well and to do that accurately. One of the things that we have done through this is really explode the general ledger from where it was when we first came. When I first got to the district, we had our budget in very few accounts. We weren't budgeting at the same level that we were reporting actuals in. For this process to work well, you do need to have alignment on that. You need to budget at that same level that you're spending on. If it's important to record the actual transaction at that level, you need to be forecasting at that level as well. And so we have training every summer for the school administration, and we have a manual for them to talk about how they're coding things, and for that process, we are meeting with them every single month. The zones have what we call a zone bookkeeper, similar to exactly what DPS is talking about, having some expertise out in the field. And we meet with them every single month. We talk about the issues that we're seeing in the financials, what are the difficulties in the processes, what's working well, what's not working well for their processes. And so we try and be very responsive to those needs.
I guess my follow-up is, this is someone who's been at Tor, the accountants, we tend to be protective of our data and not really lean on some non-accounting doing a bunch of coding. So when you talk about the training for the principal school level and the need for buy-in, did you have any of the same issue with the accounting department, or was that they just followed your lead?
No, there was cultural change in that as well, and we went from an authoritative role to a consultative role, and we went from a place of doing a lot of the coding firsthand to reviewing coding and reacting to coding. We have suspense accounts basically for every school location. When they make a code that isn't correct, and it gets into that suspense account, and then we have folks that will come back to them and say, okay, this wasn't work, this wasn't correct, it didn't work. And have the discussion with them and coach them and say, okay, here's how you needed to code that. That happens on a monthly basis as well. So it's kind of a review and consultation. Yeah.
I'm just wondering on the process for the per pupil funding, do you go through that normalization process and then allocate those dollar amounts on a per pupil basis out to the schools or out to the zones, or how does that actually translate?
We both, and we do it to the schools, but we allow as that zone can roll up that zone with its by school and say, okay, you can make adjustments now. Where do you want to move money? If you have a big, we had one zone that had a big literacy focus in elementary education. They were able to reorganize some funds and talk about it as a leadership team and say, yes, it's important to us as the middle school group, it's important to us as the high school group to focus on that elementary literacy, and we will help you invest in some funds in that. So within the zone, they can make those types of decisions. We have given them the allocation on the school level, but we allow that autonomy, that decision-making as a team, as a unit, to do that as they need.
So is every kid in the zone funded at the exact same amount?
Every kid in the zone is funded at the exact same amount on a normalized basis, yes.
Within the
provide differentiation on the funding that comes and how they are able to spend the program. We don't attach it specifically to each child per se, but we do provide the school with a resource that says, okay, you have a different profile here in your school. Here are those additional funds you can use to support that profile. You will help us determine how to best do that and serve that. It's very good. Thank you. I appreciate all your questions.
I have one more in terms of how you share information between zones.
How we share information between zones. So we have monthly meetings with our zone leaders as well. The chief officer team and the zone leaders, we get together and we talk about all the issues that are pressing in the day, including the financial aspects. Again, we're producing this information on a monthly basis to the Board of Education. So we're making presentations about that every month. And so we try and have a great deal of transparency when a particular issue comes up with a particular zone. We're trying to we would make sure that the other zone leaders are aware of that. And if it's something that would really affect their potential funding, they will then participate in that then as well and say, and that's when there's a negotiation between the zone leaders, and I become the moderator, I become the scorekeeper at that point. I'm not making the decision, but I'm helping them understand the facts, let them negotiate between themselves, and then saying, yes, okay, that makes sense, or let's adjust it here, and then go at this level. So we are doing that regularly, routinely, on a monthly basis, and especially when it gets into the budget time. Let's see here. Back here at the back of the presentations are just a couple examples, again, not to be viewed on the screen, of some of the bridges and walkboards that we will do to help quantify and people understand the impact of normalizations and how the budgets are built. This particular page talks about the programmatic and operational or organizational, normalizations right up here at the top. And by the 4 zones, and what does each of those zones request mean to the other zones? Okay, when again, I mentioned one school has the IB program and they want a programmatic normalization for the IB program. That costs basically every student in the district a certain amount of money to fund that program at that school. And so we line those up, we stack those up and say, okay, you got extra funding for IB, you also chipped in some funding for a STEM program over here, and chipped in some funding for the CTE program over there. Here's the net result of what it means to your school. So we can layer all that out for them here. And this is a bridge which takes us from 1 year's per pupil normalized per pupil funding rate down to the next year's per pupil funding rate, and all the changes that happen in normalizations in between. Yes?
So when you do that, when you look at every school, are there outliers that get a lot more money than other schools because they have more specialized programming? And does that cause pushback between zones or between schools?
No, yes, there are outliers. There are schools that get a significant amount more. But because we have the information to demonstrate this is how we derived on it, and because we provide them the opportunity to have a voice in how that's actually quantified, there ends up not being tension because they were part of the process along the way. They said we laid it out for them. This is the situation. For instance, one of our zones pays the full freight for our online and blended curriculum. That all comes out of one zone. Each zone gets to participate in that. So they understand that here's one big $600,000 spend happening in a particular zone, but they're all contributing to that, and they're all basically agreeing to that. So I don't know that I had anything else in particular to share, but I do appreciate your questions and things. What else could I answer for you? Yes.
I guess on the accounting side again, you said you had your 28-digit chart accounts code, which I know that's, can be a lot of fun and exciting for the accountant. Oh my gosh, how am I going to divide this up into all the fields? So before you rolled this out, was it really the accounting department that sat down and said, with the board that said, how do we want to divide these and make the chart of accounts so that when it rolls up, we have all these different layers of reporting, you have department level, location level, program level, which, that's what that kind of chart of account is really well suited to. And is it also based on the CDD, so that when you go to report the CDD, you can just easily just roll it over and it's the same?
Yeah, we take straight out of the general ledger that we're using every day, and that's what goes into the ADE or the data warehouse now. In terms of designing that structure, I would say that really happened a lot at my desk probably, and folks in the accounting and business office to do that. But we do modify that as we go. We find redact comes into play. Okay, well, let's figure out how we're going to account for redact, so that we can both roll up redact and total. So how redact impacts each school location. Yes.
So in the negotiations, if one school gets something very expensive, like an ID program, do the other schools then, as a trade-off, get something else for them? I mean, are there these trade-offs where you're saying this school gets an ID program and these schools, not so much?
There are not trade-offs per se, because we're not trying to have equality. We're trying to have equity. And so if you need something in your school or zone and you have an intention for what you want to do with that, then by all means ask for that. But just because IB is being funded over here doesn't mean you get the exact same amount of dollars over here if you don't have a plan and an intention for that. So yeah, STEM, we have one zone that focuses on STEM. We have one zone that focuses on IB. The STEM, in the end, doesn't cost as much as IB. So they're not getting as many dollars for that. They understand that, and they understand that they don't want to go to IB. They're happy with their STEM portfolio that they're pursuing. Yeah.
Just to follow up on that then, so say the STEM zone wants to expand or enhance or add something that's going to be expensive STEM-wise. There's no more money coming in. Then does that?
Well, they have the opportunity to make that request on the next cycle.
It doesn't create a competition factor between the zones? And
We try initially. I think that was one of the mistakes we made early on, was to try and have a competitive environment. And instead, we kind of navigated to more of a sibling rivalry type of thing, so that we're all one district. We are in support of each other. We're trying to create a portfolio district, meaning that there are different levels, of different programs, different styles of delivering the educational model amongst the district. We're not trying to duplicate everything in every zone. So yeah, when they have another good idea, the next idea that they want to push and expand a program, by all means, that we want them to do that and bring that to the table and have that discussion as the entire group and say, does that fit with the overall strategies, and what opportunities will we have to fund that? We do have a very small mill levy override option that we have, that one of our strategies on that is to use that to seed those beta programs. If that beta program becomes successful, out of MLO dollars, we ask them to incorporate that into their general fund. So that provides some of that opportunity for those additional developments. Ken?
Yeah, Brett. Does each school, do they have a carryover and effective fund balance then at the end of the year? And
Yes,
I can see the principal being real efficient and maybe not being really effective. He can maybe save a lot of money and come up with a large fund balance that might grow every year. Do you have some way of monitoring that, or do they allow any carryover? Or just,
So carryover, yes, we do allow carryover. We have 100% carryover, plus or minus. And we have experienced that when things get slightly out of control and a zone or a school goes over budget, they have to make that right the next year. But yeah, that doesn't happen very often. It's more often on the positive side where they're accumulating some funds. But we ask for intention about that as well. We don't want to accumulate fund balance for the sake of accumulating fund balance. We are funded per pupil revenue every year to educate those students for that year. If we just accumulate it without any real plan for that, we're not serving the students well. So if you want to build up fund balance, if you have a big project, that's great. Let's talk about that. Let's make sure you have a plan. Let's watch how it progresses. If it's, of course, over a couple of years or multiple years, that's what we do. And we will help them with that. But we don't, again, we want plan, we want intention on that. And that includes departments as well. The internal vendors and the internal service groups, they get 100% carryover as well. And they are under the same requirements. What's your plan? If you are carrying over balance, what is it? If you want to cobble together a couple of years carry over to buy an extra bus, that's great. But we would help you do that.
So I think a lot of people in the room are aware that under the new state law that there's going to be school level financial transparency reporting done through CE. That requirement is supposed to come live in 2 years. I'm not sure anybody knows what it's going to look like. But from a school district perspective and the work you've done and the work you've seen some of those other districts, how well prepared is that, do you feel, for this requirement? Is it something other districts could draw from that experience, even if just to meet those coming transparency requirements?
That would be one of the big reasons I would suggest people pursuing this type of model, because yeah, we're ready to do that tomorrow if that's what we needed to do. To have school level reporting. We've tried to do it. I'm doing it at the zone level right now, mainly to try and have a good level of a good boundary between where is the Board of Education involved, where is administration involved versus what's happening at the building level. And if we draw that boundary at the zone level, that's providing us a good way to make sure that we're not micromanaging and getting into business that we really want those local leaders to make decisions and be able to impact their kids with.
Anything else? Any other questions?